Flinton is the Chief Executive of North Yorkshire County Council. Richard was appointed in 2010, having previously been the County Council's Corporate Director of Business and Environmental Services. By my reckoning, Richard's actually been with the authority for around 30 years. Gary Fielding is Corporate Director of Finance of the County Council. He's been in post since 2012, having previously been the Assistant Chief Executive for 4 years. Gary is also the President of the Society of County Treasurers. Richard and Gary are going to talk about John's contribution to the county, to regional and the national scene, and intriguingly, as well as to the world of pensions. Now, I'd love to know what that's all about. Richard and Gary, please.
Thank you very much, everybody. We're going to do a bit of a double act, and it's a great pleasure to be here at what we will always refer to as deeply, deeply rural Wensleydale, to share our recollections of working with John and to help celebrate what was a really, truly remarkable life. John was first elected as a county councillor back in 1997, and he was elected 5 times at the county council. He was first independent, then a Conservative, and then back an independent. A bit of the journey shared by some people in the audience, at least. It feels like that I've worked with John almost my entire career. I first came into the local authority as a trading standards officer, and one of the first things I had to do was come across a complaint about unsafe electrical items in a holiday cottage, and I had to go and see the person responsible for the holiday cottage to give them some advice. Well, frankly, I was on the receiving end of the advice, and it's been something of a feature that endured for the rest of my career, frankly. John had an interesting relationship with officers. He could be supportive, complimentary, charming, pointed, insistent, and occasionally a little bit beyond the pale. And there were a number of occasions when I, as Chief Executive, would invite John in to discuss maybe how he'd engage with some of the officers. He always responded positively to those occasions, until the next time, really. Eventually, you could usually look back on the incidents and smile. One such incident took place in autumn 2015. We were getting ready for winter. Money was tight as ever in this period of time, and we were looking at rationalising the number of grip bins that there were out and about. David Bow was our corporate director leading this, and he received the following lines from John. Hawes and High Abbotside Parish Council already have 2 grip bins of their own on the highway. If they are removed, the Parish Council will report what would be an outbreak of highway robbery to our local police station, handily placed in the Upper Wensleydale Community Office in Hawes, and they might get a suggestion of who the high-ranking culprit would be. So that was one incident. David then told me about another that happened not too many years ago, when there was work taking place in Hawes and the cobbles were being replaced. And there was, as you can imagine, a lot of concern in the town about the disruption being caused to the cobbles, and John duly called a town meeting, of which David was asked to attend along with a contractor, and John introduced them to the meeting, thanked them for coming in a very kind and charming way, and then told the audience that David had given him a guaranteed deadline date by which the work would finish, and if they all checked their invitation, he'd attach David's personal mobile number just in case there was any difficulties with that deadline. You have a sense of how John could be insistent at times. But Gary too also worked very closely with him, and as we infrequently said, in a lot of pension.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, whilst everybody knows that John was very active in his local community, what many of you might not know was that he was championing a broader community. So John was on the pension fund committee, and there's about 90,000 members, and he would always point out that it was important to fight for those pensioners, but also for the taxpayers who funded it. So John joined the pension fund committee, of which I'm the treasurer, and so had the delights of working with John. but he joined on the 1st of September 2005. And back in that day, the funding level of the pension fund was 59% of what it ought to be. It had total investments of £919 million. And then if you looked at where it was at the last pension fund committee that John went to, then the funding level was 118%, exactly twice what it was when John started. And it had assets of £3.5 billion. So I'm sure John would be delighted that that was part of the legacy. And John was always very good in pointing out that was as a consequence of decades of good work from officers, members of the pension fund committee, and always holding one's nerve. By his own admission, John was not an expert in the pension funds, but he did demonstrate a tremendous amount of knowledge. And I could always tell when he was up to something. He would sometimes bang into my office with a twinkle in his eye, and I knew he was after a pension fund conference, because he'd say, "Gary, can I borrow the trophy?" And he would come and take this off the desk. He would go to a conference circuit, and he would always find a way of reading a question to one of the presenters. And it went on the following lines. Can I just ask, what recommendation would you give to make sure that you can help pension funds to deliver tremendous performance, just like we have in North Yorkshire, and he would wave the trophy around ostentatiously? And then, in his usual humility, he would then say, if anybody wants to know how to run a pension fund, please come and see me in the bar afterwards. And it's also fair to say that John had his perks at the pension fund committee. Without any doubt at all, his contributions will be massively missed. But one thing I can say is that myself and the chairman will not miss the first 30 minutes of the pension fund committee meeting. John seemed to have the uncanny knack of stumbling into a pension fund committee exactly 20 minutes late, every single time. He would then proceed to shout out to everyone, "Sorry, Mr. Chairman, apologies for being late. Traffic's terrible coming from Hawes. It's deeply rural, don't you know?" And apparently, Hawes gets 20 minutes more deeply rural every pension fund committee meeting. He then proceeds to get himself a cup of coffee, do everything he can to avoid sitting in the seat that we'd allocated for him with his nameplate on it, then get his papers and his computer out of the noisiest carrier bag in the world. Just when all starts to feel calm, what would happen? We would hear a bit of... Never answer it first time. Not enough of an impression. And then we'd get the, "I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I must just leave the room. I'm being approached by a journalist," which then meant he had another opportunity to make another entrance. One last pension fund anecdote, I'm afraid. John didn't like pooling. Some of you may know that pension funds have had to pool their investments. John was not a big fan. There aren't many councillors on the pension fund committee who are fans. But I do remember the time when a senior executive from this pooling company came along, and John asked a question. He said, again, similar flag, "The North Yorkshire Pension Fund's done incredibly well over a number of years and has managed to do this without the bloated overheads of a pooling company. We've seen the kinds of salaries that you and your colleagues earn, and quite frankly, I'm not sure how it can be justified. Some might say, snipes in the trough." You don't mind me asking, do you?
So, back to me. In the late 1990s, I at the time was working in a directorate to do with libraries, and we were pulling together a complete refresh of libraries and working in halls. And with John there. So we came to create the current library base where it is, and a big refurb was going on there, working with John, and that took the opportunity of pulling together the community office and the one-stop shop that it became to be, with the county council, district council of police, even an internet cafe right at those early times. And then I had the opportunity of subsequently working with John around the Little White Bus. Austerity drove us to the creation of the Little White Bus, where we were faced with reducing budgets, and we were taking money out of that we spent on public transport. In some parts of the county we lost services, and through a conversation with John about having to reduce money on buses, it was about how could we innovate, what was the amount of money that we were prepared to spend, and what were we prepared to do to work with John on creating a solution. And out of that, and down frankly to John's drive and commerciality, came what we know today as the Little White Bus. We know that John's social enterprises then continued to develop with the post office, the sorting office, community land trust, the 24/7 filling station, which frankly has, as he always told me, the most competitive prices this side of Texas. And even a month before John died, we were jointly hosting a meeting with the Newcastle Building Society team about bringing yet another service into the community partnership. A partnership that is actually, as I'm sure you all know, a beacon of rural sustainability, how innovation can try and counter austerity, and stands as an enormous tribute to John's drive and energy. Talking of this drive and energy, he had to get around the county and came across Gary with his expenses.
This was not a pleasant experience. John was always on the go. He went everywhere, as you've heard other people saying. And in his role as a councillor, he was very active. John therefore built up quite a list of expenses. There was never any risk of John submitting irregular or improper expenses. He was always very proper in that regard. The challenge we faced with John was just getting him to submit an expenses form. This was at the time of the MP's expenses scandals, so we decided what we needed to do was tighten up on councils and expenses. So myself and the monitoring officer, we did a training session on the pitfalls and what the new regime was. And we said to members, we expect you to submit your expenses claim within 3 months. And if you don't, you'll have the unpleasant task of appearing before myself and the monitoring officer to run through your forms. It was only a matter of time before John fell foul of this regime. And he was the first. I therefore wrote to him advising that as he was out of time, then he needed to book in and see Carol and myself. John did not take kindly to my email. He proceeded to explain how he was so incredibly busy and he couldn't possibly find the 10 minutes to submit his expenses claim as he was busy championing rural communities, seeking to protect health provision, fighting for the downtrodden across the globe, and particularly Hawes and High Abbotside. He was so incensed that he copied in all councillors to his response. And felt so indignant he had to copy in various journalists. How was he going to find the 10 minutes to submit his expenses claim?
So, we mentioned about John being a provider for his community, but he was also a great protector of it as well. Protecting against austerity and cuts, as I mentioned, but also the livelihood and the way of life of the Upper Dales. And we have a particularly typical John exchange that demonstrates this. It came about when a police officer was on holiday in the area, and he and his partner and their little dog Poppy got chased by a particularly aggressive herd of cattle and wrote to complain, copying in the local member. John's reply went along these lines. The cows grazing unfenced have been an iconic feature of both Gunnerside and Low Row, and long may that continue. Farming is the mainstay of the Upper Swaledale, with 40% of its population involved, so your repeated references to tourism and how we must bear it in mind will cut little ice, and rightly so with the local people and farmers who are going about their business as they have done for centuries. The arrival of kitted-out model tourists in Burgess and regatta clothing with brasher boots has left them completely unfazed. Hooray, I say! The Upper Dales residents, who I'm so proud to represent, were here first by a long way. The rampaging nature of your correspondence detracts from what you have to say, containing, not only as it does, all of the questions, but all of the answers as well. I would calm down if I were you and think what your reaction would be as a serving police officer in Lancashire if a person from Yorkshire tried to tell you to do your job. So there's a policeman completely told. But as well as taking on people from outside of the Dales, he also took on some national interest groups as well.
Imagine the years 2012, austerity started to bite hard. The government's just offered a council tax freeze grant, and the leader of Richmondshire District Council, certain John Blackie, has just proposed that grant's not taken and that council tax was increased. There's coverage in the local press, and a body known as the Taxpayers Alliance took him to task. They decided they were going to propose a day of action, and there was much scrutiny. I can definitely say that as an officer, we were wary of the Taxpayers Alliance. At first, John was tact and diplomacy personified. He wrote a very measured letter to the Taxpayers Alliance stating that all the sensitivities and opinions around council tax are fully understood, and any day of action should be informed by local circumstances. I invite you to meet with me. The National Grassroots Coordinator for the Taxpayers Alliance responded as follows. Councillor Blackie, thank you for contacting us. You should be looking to reduce the burden on council taxpayers, not increase it. It's great you've been working with other councils to reduce their costs, but councils such as Wandsworth, Hammersmith and Fulham, and Windsor and Maidenhead have in recent years managed to considerably reduce council tax bills. Perhaps looking at how they have done it would be a good place to start. For example, the council could cut the 65 pence per mile car user allowance. I appreciate your offer of meeting, but I'm far too busy to attend. Mistake. Response. I'm sorry you're too busy to be able to hear our side of the story. Members are reimbursed mileage at the rate of 40 pence per mile. My local garage in Hawes, because of where it is and low levels of sales, has to charge £1.49 per litre. How much do you pay at your local Sainsbury's or Tesco's? I have to use a 4x4. Coming across Butter Tubs, I recently encountered 6 inches of snow that had fallen in less than 1 hour. Not something I expect you to come across travelling from Tufton Street, London. SW1, I'm willing to wager. Has the Taxpayers Alliance considered being based in the north, where you'll be able to reduce your office expenditure, rather than one of the most fashionable areas of central London? I would love to offer the Upper Dales here in North Yorkshire, but we have no TV, radio, mobile phones, broadband, inadequate telephone system. The scorched earth policy you advocate would mean they have no public services at all to speak of. Sorry, chum, nothing doing. End of correspondence.
Okay, so as we all knew him, and I suppose many of you as well, John was a man of strong views and not frightened to share them with you, regardless of whether you wanted to hear them, actually. So he could be quite a Marmite character with some. And we've kept in our office a favoured piece of correspondence that dates back to July 2001 that demonstrates this. It's actually sent to the then leader of the county council, John Wheel. And it was at the time of the foot and mouth outbreak when John was appointed to chair the committee on this. So the letter to the leader of the council went as follows. Sir, may I congratulate you on making John Blackie chairman of the Foot and Mouth Committee. It is about time some expertise was brought to bear. John Blackie always has his mouth open, ready to receive his foot. So John did tend to get a little bit back with what he gave out from time to time. Occasionally, and perhaps more than occasionally, John's style would lead him into conflict with authority, not just conversations with the chief exec, but complaints to the council's standards committee as well, where he, as he will tell anybody who asks him anything about the situation, he won on all 8 times he was referred to the standards committee. All of them make interesting reading, and a particular favourite line of mine where a local constituent was taken to task. They were from Summerwater, and he told them to go jump in the lake, which after all is very near to where you are. So John's campaigning cussedness, determination to get things done was a big part of him. But actually he was also an enormously caring individual for his community, but also people who he came across. And it's really poignant to me that one of the last times that I spoke to John was when he rang me on a Saturday evening, and he was really, really concerned about a sudden bereavement to one of his staff, one of his team, who'd also worked at the county council, and it was what could we collectively do to rally round and make sure that we help deal with the situation. We've all enjoyed working enormously with John, and those sorts of memories stick with you, and I think the same with you as well, Gary.
Yeah, as Richard says, like all senior officers who encountered John, we always crossed swords at some point. But he was extremely generous and considerate, and I just remember one time, I would frequently get emails from John, as most people would, but there was one year when we'd been particularly struggling with the budget, and John had noticed that I was rather down, and so later that week a very simple message came through, and it just said, "Gary and family, have a lovely break this Christmas, enjoy yourselves, sod Eric Pickles." Very best wishes, John, also known as the Hurricane from Hardrow. And that was him. Personality as colourful as his scars, and like a hurricane, he's a real force of nature.
Okay, so we've probably taken far too much time, James. We're coming to our sort of final quote, really. And this one to leave you with. And this took place following John's death, and when we had the floods that hit this part of the world. This was taught to me by currently the County Council, Carl Les, who was out with Rishi Sunak, meeting communities, talking about the clear-up operation and what was happening. And they went across to a couple of locals, a couple of farmers who were just waiting around, and they were asking them, what do you make of all of the clean-up? And one of the gentlemen there said, well, it would go so much quicker and so much better if John Blackie was in charge of it. And the other farmer leans across and said, well, John Blackie was here, it wouldn't have rained in the first place.